Have you ever looked at a company, one that seems to possess this almost magical secret? One that allows it not just to succeed, but to really endure, to thrive for decades, maybe even centuries, especially when so many businesses, well, they rise and fall faster than you can refresh your social media feed. What is that elusive thing, that alchemy, of preserving what makes you uniquely you, while simultaneously adapting and evolving everything else at, like, lightning speed? Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we cut through all the noise to bring you the essential insights from, a whole stack of fascinating material you've shared with us. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into that very paradox, the core dynamics of how organizations build and sustain power, and what it truly takes to thrive amidst constant disruption and change. Think of it as balancing continuity with progress, preserving your core while stimulating relentlessly. It's that genius of the A&D people talk about.
Exactly. And our mission today is really to uncover those fundamental principles that define strategic advantage. We want to explore how successful companies navigate and adapt to these ever-evolving markets and crucially examine the critical, often understated, role of leadership and internal culture in steering these complex ships. We'll be looking at, well, everything from the abstract concept of power and business, the strategic stuff, right down to the very human element of how teams function and how leaders make decisions. And we'll be drawing some, I think, surprising connections between these seemingly separate areas.
And we have an incredible array of sources today. We're talking groundbreaking work on competitive advantage, some really fascinating insights on leadership, marketing, even the deep psychology of how we make decisions. Our goal is to pull out those crucial nuggets that help you understand not just what happens in successful organizations, but why it matters for you. Whether you're building a business, leading a team, or maybe just trying to navigate your own career path, these insights hopefully will give you a powerful mental model for balancing that continuity and change. Preserve the core, stimulate progress.
Okay, let's kick things off with a really foundational concept from Seven Powers. What exactly is a barrier in the context of business strategy? It's much more than just a temporary hurdle. A barrier is an obstacle that fundamentally prevents competitors from eroding a company's long-term benefit. Imagine it like an impenetrable moat around your castle. It's a strategic defense that lets you sustain your advantage over time.
A moat. Okay, so not just something that slows them down, but something that actually stops them or makes it incredibly costly to compete.
Precisely. Take Netflix, for instance. Their early lead in subscribers didn't just give them market share, it directly translated into lower content costs per subscriber for their originals and exclusives. That's a huge cost advantage. But the barrier, the real moat preventing others from simply copying this away, lies in this nuanced dynamic called collateral damage prevention, or CP.
Collateral damage prevention, CP. Okay, unpack that a bit.
Right. CP suggests that rational incumbents think the established players with big existing businesses might actually delay entering a new market or hold back on directly challenging a disruptive newcomer. Why? Well, because entering early when the challenger is still small often means cannibalizing their own profitable existing customer base. That's the collateral damage.
Ah, I see. So it's the potential erosion of their current market share, maybe revenue loss, even brand dilution if they rush into something new and unproven.
Exactly. So if I'm an incumbent, it's not just about being slow-footed. It can actually be a calculated, rational decision. The perceived risk-adjusted size of that collateral damage might diminish over time. As the challenger grows and starts stealing customers anyway, the incumbent's original business shrinks. Suddenly, the potential damage of entering the new market feels less impactful. It's like a waiting for your own ship to get smaller before you decide to switch to a newer, maybe smaller vessel.
But the longer they wait, the more entrenched the challenger becomes,
Right.
thanks to that very barrier you mentioned.
Precisely. It buys the challenger time to solidify their position. This insight is really powerful for both sides. Challengers can try to engineer situations to maximize this incumbent in action, and incumbents, well, they need to recognize when that point arrives where the potential future gains do offset the immediate collateral damage. It's a tricky calculation.
So it's about having that defensible advantage, the moat, that keeps rivals at bay long enough.
Exactly. And the author of Seven Powers offers a mantra for continuing power. It's about finding a dynamic, ongoing route to continuously layer on different sources of power in significant markets. It's not a one-time thing. It's a commitment to constantly reinforcing your advantages. Think of it like a strategic onion, always adding more layers of protection. Keep preserving that core advantage.
Layers of protection, I like that. And how does this connect to the dynamics of actually building power?
Well, this mantra is intrinsically linked to the dynamics of power, which outlines three crucial steps. First, resources. These are the raw abilities a company can bring to bear. They can be unique and personal, like Steve Jobs' legendary aesthetic sensibilities, or massive and structural, like Google's vast data stores and search algorithms. Think about Netflix again. Their original DVD by mail business, which seems almost quaint now, provided an incredible suite of transferable resources for their move to streaming.
Right, like the recommendation engine, the user interface design, all that customer data on what people like to watch.
Exactly, and establish relationships with content owners, too. The existing platform wasn't just a foundation, it was a launch pad. It allowed them to offer streaming as a complementary service initially, which significantly de-risked the whole venture compared to a standalone startup just jumping into streaming cold.
Okay, so resources first. Then comes invention, right? For Netflix, that was streaming, and then, crucially, originals.
Yes, and the book describes invention as crafted, not designed, which I find really insightful. It highlights that while the raw potential for invention might be sitting right there, maybe obvious in hindsight, it takes a unique blend of vision, iteration, and sheer audacity for someone to actually seize that potential and craft it into something real and impactful. It's not just an idea, it's a meticulously built reality. It requires stimulating that progress.
Crafted, not designed. That's a great phrase. But invention alone isn't enough, you said.
You're absolutely right, and this is critical. Invention in itself doesn't assure power. Most inventions actually don't lead to power. Even operational excellence, or constantly reinventing yourself, doesn't automatically translate into that defensible, lasting power. The final and most crucial step is power itself. For Netflix, this was their strategic thrust into exclusives and original programming.
The content mode.
Precisely. By investing heavily in content they owned or exclusively licensed, they started to rein in those content costs, relatively speaking, forging powerful scale economies. They created content available only on their platform, drawing more subscribers, which in turn justified higher content spending, creating this virtuous cycle and a really powerful barrier. The profound insight from 7 powers is that these 7 specific power types, things like scale economies, network effects, cornered resource, branding, switching costs, process power, and counter-positioning, are, as far as the author knows, the only fundamental strategies available to a company to truly have a viable, sustainable advantage.
Only 7. That's a bold claim.
It is, but the argument is that if you don't possess at least one of these powers, relative to each significant competitor, current or potential, direct or functional, you're essentially operating without a real long-term strategy. You haven't preserved a core defensible advantage.
Wow. Okay, so 7 powers gives us the blueprint for what makes a strategy viable. How does playing to win fit in? It sounds like it's about where you apply that blueprint.
Exactly. Playing to win challenges us to think about strategy not just as reacting to the market, but as an internal discipline. The real goal isn't just grabbing a better market position now, but creating a way of strategic thinking that actively connects to future opportunities. It really pushes back against the idea that your where-to-play choices are fixed.
Like you're stuck in your industry box.
Right. It argues that companies always have a choice of where to play, and making that choice is a profound act of strategic agency. It's about stimulating progress by actively defining your own playing field. Look at Apple. They weren't bound by being a desktop computer company. They made deliberate, strategic choices to fundamentally change their playing field.
With the iPod, iTunes, iPhone, iPad.
Yeah,
they completely redefined things.
They didn't just evolve, they shifted the entire industry's definition of personal computing and communication. It wasn't passive or lucky, it was a conscious, strategic redefinition of their core business and a bold stimulation of progress. It shows that where you are doesn't dictate where you can be.
And strategy usually boils down to cost leadership or differentiation, right? But playing to win said some companies can do both.
Yes, it notes that some rare companies, typically those with overwhelming market share and significant scale-sensitive costs, can manage both simultaneously. Think IBM in its mainframe heyday, or maybe Google today with search and ads, or eBay in its early days. P&G in certain categories like detergent also achieves this. They command a price premium and produce at a lower cost. It's the sort of holy grail.
But it's rare and maybe temporary.
That's the crucial warning. Markets are dynamic. New competitors will emerge, often forcing companies to eventually choose. IBM faced this when Hitachi and Fujitsu entered mainframes with lower cost strategies. eBay saw challenges from Craigslist and others. It's incredibly hard to maintain both without a truly unique, overwhelming power source. The text also warns about dangerous strategic traps.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, there's the Waterloo strategy, starting wars on too many fronts at once. The something for everyone strategy, trying to please all segments and ending up pleasing none well. And the dreams that never come true strategy, basically, having big aspirations without concrete choices or the capabilities to actually make them happen. These are all powerful warnings against a lack of focus, against ambition that isn't grounded in a clear path to achieve and defend power.
Okay, so building on those strategic choices, let's talk disruption. It feels like the defining challenge today. The innovator's dilemma is classic here, right? It explains why big, successful companies often get sideswiped by disruptive tech.
Absolutely. And it's not usually because they're badly managed or blind. It often comes down to their value network. That's the whole context, how they identify customer needs, solve problems, make money. Their established ways of working, ironically, become the blind spot.
How so?
Well, within that existing value network, a company's past choices and current strategy shape how they perceive a new technology's economic value. This naturally leads them to allocate resources towards sustaining innovations, things that make their current products better for their current best customers, usually promising higher margins.
It makes sense. You listen to your best customers, give them what they want.
Right. But that means they inadvertently shy away from disruptive innovations. Those often initially don't appeal to the best customers, might have lower margins, or even seem technically inferior at first. The examples are pretty stark. Control Data, a leader in big 14-inch disk drives, totally missed the boat on the mini computer market, capturing less than 1%. Others like Miniscribe, Quantum, Micropolis had similar painful experiences trying to enter new drive markets late. They failed in the new markets and at best only defended parts of their old business.
So your success, your focus on preserving the existing core, can actually blind you to the next big thing. It makes stimulating progress incredibly hard.
It's a powerful illustration. The metrics and customer feedback driving your current success can actively lead you astray from tomorrow's growth. That's the dilemma.
That's sobering. And this idea of being locked in, that's where strategic flexibility comes in. It talks about inertia, right?
Right. Exactly. It really hammers home this point. Managers often respond slowly to fundamental market shifts, maybe only when a crisis hits, and by then it can be way too late. Some firms get locked into trajectories by strategies they adopted years, even decades earlier. This can lead to a downward spiral they can't escape, sometimes visible 10 years before they actually fail. Think of a massive tanker. It's been sailing one way for so long, it just can't turn fast enough to avoid the iceberg, even if the crew sees it coming. They're preserving a core that's becoming irrelevant.
The trajectory, so past decisions really constrain future ones.
Yes, the trajectory concept is critical. It's the path through competitive space carved out by decisions over time. It shows how strategy is path-dependent and dynamic. Past choices influence current ones, and vice versa. What's fascinating here is the idea of a punctuated process for renewal. This means alternating periods of exploitation, stability, efficiency with periods of creativity and revolution.
Revolutionary, that sounds drastic.
It can be, especially when innovation becomes competence-destroying, when the new thing makes your old skills obsolete. This often requires significant unlearning. You have to actively let go of old ways of thinking and operating that were once successful but are now holding you back.
How do you actually do that? Unlearning sounds hard.
It is. Practically, it might mean leadership actively challenging sacred cows, setting up separate innovation labs outside the main structure, rotating teams to get fresh perspectives, or even deliberately discrediting past practices that are now outdated. It's about being willing to deconstruct parts of your core to stimulate necessary progress.
Wow. That connects perfectly to marketing myopia, doesn't it? The oil industry example.
Absolutely. Theodore Levitt's classic. They failed because they saw themselves in the oil business, specifically oil for lamps, not the broader energy business. So when coal-fired central heating came along, developed by outsiders, their lamp oil market got hammered. Then the internal combustion engine, also invented by outsiders, gave oil its most magnificent boost yet. But again, it was an external force defining their future because they defined their core too narrowly.
They were so locked into that trajectory, unwilling to unlearn "we sell lamp oil," that they almost missed the very progress that ended up saving them. Incredible.
It really underscores the danger of myopia. Now, on the flip side of struggling to adapt, you have strategies for rapid growth, like in blitzscaling.
Right. Sometimes you need speed above all else.
Yes, especially in markets with network effects. Virality, for instance, is incredibly powerful for growth, but it almost always requires the product to be free or freemium. Think Dropbox giving away storage. Facebook is a prime example. They combined organic virality, where users invited friends, with strategically leveraging existing networks.
The college-by-college rollout.
Exactly. They built dense networks that spread like wildfire. That strategic deployment let them achieve massive scale incredibly quickly, really stimulating exponential progress.
And thinking about new models, the technological revolution in financial services talks about multi-sided platforms. How do they fit in?
They're presented as a key model for the future, especially for stimulating progress. These platforms are brilliant because they drastically cut transaction costs and create powerful network externalities. They enable profitable interactions between multiple distinct groups. Banks, for example, could transform.
From just lenders to,
Yeah.
what, marketplaces?
Potentially. They could become mediators of economic activity, maybe selling technology or providing access to third-party financial providers on their platform. A true marketplace, not just selling their own stuff.
But banks seem slow to change.
That's the huge challenge highlighted. Their deeply entrenched legacy IT systems, their rigid institutional ways of thinking, their conservative culture, these are massive internal barriers. It makes it incredibly difficult for them to adopt these new, flexible models and become what Red Ocean Traps calls a both-and strategy player.
A both-and player. Meaning what?
Meaning pursuing differentiation and low cost simultaneously. Deliberately breaking that traditional assumption that you have to choose one or the other, the value-cost trade-off. Think Yellowtail wine, decent quality but at a really attractive price point, opening up a new market. Or Salesforce.com, powerful CRM, but delivered via the cloud at a fraction of traditional software cost. They stood apart and were accessible. For banks, overcoming that legacy inertia to achieve this kind of both-and transformation, preserving their trusted core while stimulating platform progress, is probably paramount for their long-term survival.
Okay, let's shift inside the organization now to the human element that really drives all this strategy. Thinking Fast and Slow, that book is mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
It explains why good decisions are just so hard.
It really does. It talks about our two systems of thinking. System one is fast, automatic, intuitive, emotional. It's always on, always forming impressions. And it makes errors of intuitive thought hard to prevent. Then there's system two, or slower, deliberate, analytical thinking. But it's effortful, lazy even, and just too slow for the constant stream of routine decisions we face. The implications for organizations are huge.
So how do we deal with that? If our brains are wired this way, how do organizations compensate?
That's the key question. The book suggests that individually the best we can do is a compromise. Learn to recognize situations where mistakes are likely, maybe when emotions are high or complexity is great, and then try harder. Engage system two more consciously when the stakes are high. Interestingly, it's often easier to spot others' mistakes than our own, which is one reason why diverse teams bringing different perspectives can be so valuable.
Okay, so rely on the team.
Partly, but at an organizational level, you can actually institutionalize system two thinking. This means putting processes in place, mandatory checklists for critical decisions, structured decision frameworks, doing pre-mortems where you imagine failure first, using red teams to challenge assumptions, assigning devil's advocates.
Building guards against our own biases.
Exactly, and the book also shows how our preferences aren't logically consistent. How you frame a choice gains versus losses can completely change decisions, leading majorities to prefer objectively inferior options. We also suffer from probability neglect, ignoring the actual likelihood of something, especially if it's emotionally vivid. Leaders have to actively create structures and cultures that mitigate these deeply human tendencies.
Structures and culture, that leads us to leadership. What makes a leader emphasizes emotional intelligence, right?
Yes, critically. It starts with self-awareness, really understanding your own emotions, your strengths, weaknesses, needs, drives. It's about being honest with yourself and others, not overly critical, not unrealistically hopeful. Leaders cultivate this through reflection, seeking feedback, understanding their impact.
And then there's drive.
Yes, the drive to achieve, setting high standards for yourself and the organization, that relentless desire for improvement. And finally, the often underestimated power of empathy in business. This isn't about being soft or agreeing with everyone. It's about understanding others' emotional makeup, truly listening, considering their feelings alongside other factors in making decisions. It builds trust, enables influence, and preserves the human core of the organization.
Trust is huge. And leadership that gets results connects these styles directly to the bottom line.
It does, providing empirical evidence. Leadership styles profoundly influence the organizational climate, how it feels to work there. And that climate, in turn, can affect financial results by as much as a third. That's significant. The best leaders aren't stuck in one mode. They're skilled at several styles: coercive, authoritative, affiliative, democratic, pace setting, coaching, and they flexibly switch between them as the situation demands, like a conductor using different instruments.
Can you give an example? Like the coaching style.
Sure, a coaching style, when done well, sends a clear message. I believe in you, I'm investing in you, and I expect your best. It focuses on developing people for the future. This approach fosters responsibility, clarity about roles and expectations, and deep commitment. It makes employees bring their heart, mind, and soul to the challenge, not just their hands. It really stimulates progress by growing people's capabilities.
That adaptability sounds key. High output management, that's Andy Grove's book, right?
Okay.
Very practical stuff.
Incredibly practical. For instance, it advises tailoring the frequency of one-on-one meetings to a subordinate's job or task-relevant maturity. Someone new to a task needs frequent check-ins, maybe weekly. A seasoned pro might only need them every few weeks. It optimizes the manager's time and impact. It also stresses a crucial point about organizational health. It doesn't depend on everyone always agreeing. It depends on people committing to support decisions once they're made, even if they initially disagreed.
That sounds tough, especially for middle managers caught between top-down decisions and their team's views.
It is. They often struggle with this needing to accept and execute decisions they might have argued against. It requires navigating that tension between personal views and organizational alignment. It's about preserving unity, even amidst diverse opinions.
And performance appraisals. Grove had specific ideas there, too.
Yes, very clear advice. Expectations should be clarified in advance, no surprises. And the key is to balance output measures, the results, like sales quotas met or designs completed, with internal measures. Internal measures are the activities inside the department that set the stage for future output. Things like developing people, improving processes, building capabilities for the future. There's no single right weighting, but you must be conscious of the trade-offs. Are you prioritizing short-term results or long-term capability building? Knowing which variables you're trading off is crucial for balancing today's performance with tomorrow's progress.
That makes sense. Shifting slightly, the new one-minute manager offers some really simple techniques to catching people doing something right thing.
Yes, it's incredibly simple but powerful, especially when people are new to a task. Catching them doing something right and giving immediate, specific, one-minute praisings. The underlying insight is profound behavioral psychology. Goals begin behaviors, and consequences influence future behaviors. By focusing on positive reinforcement, praising good work immediately and sincerely, you shape desired behavior far more effectively and sustainably than by always pointing out mistakes. It's a fundamental way to stimulate progress in individual performance and build confidence.
Okay, let's talk teams. How do we get them working well together, especially when disagreement arises? The discipline of teams has an interesting take.
It does. It makes this crucial distinction between enlightened and unenlightened disagreements. In an enlightened disagreement, people can articulate their opponent's argument to the opponent's satisfaction. Think about that.
Wow. So it's not about agreeing, but proving you truly understand the other side.
Exactly. It demonstrates such deep understanding that the other person feels genuinely heard and respected, even if you still disagree. This shared understanding and mutual respect often leads to better, more integrated solutions than either side had initially. Unenlightened disagreements, on the other hand, are where people just talk past each other, don't really listen, and it leads to stalemate and resentment.
That sounds vital for psychological safety. The 5 dysfunctions of a team talks about how teams can lose their glow around conflict, right?
Yes, fear of conflict is a key dysfunction. It gives a great example of a leader who actively encouraged conflict. She promised her staff that every meeting would be loaded with conflict, but not boring. Her reasoning: if there's nothing worth debating, there's no real need for a meeting. This pushes people beyond superficial politeness to engage with the real issues, challenge assumptions, and ultimately build trust by navigating disagreements productively. It's about stimulating progress through healthy friction.
Healthy friction, I like that. And radical candor gives us tools for feedback, which is often where conflict arises. How do you foster that?
It offers a powerful technique. Start by asking your team to criticize you. Seriously, solicit feedback on your own performance first. Kim Scott mentions using things like Michael Deering's orange box metaphor, a safe place for anonymous feedback. The core idea is to embrace the discomfort yourself. Show you can take criticism before you start dishing it out.
Lead by example. Vulnerability.
Precisely. It builds the trust needed for a culture of feedback that is both direct, radical, and caring candor. And when prioritizing what issues to tackle based on feedback, the goal isn't instant perfection everywhere. It's about making things incrementally better. Push the team to decide, what are the most important things we need to fix right now? Focus collective energy there, balancing progress with practicality.
Okay, rounding out the human element with personal effectiveness. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a classic for a reason.
Absolutely, it's a masterclass. It defines a habit, not just as behavior, but as the intersection of 3 things. Knowledge, what to do and why, skill, how to do it, and desire, the motivation, the want to do it. You need all 3 for something to stick. It also lays out the maturity continuum. Moving from dependence, you rely on others, through independence, you rely on yourself, to the highest level, interdependence, we can achieve more together synergistically. It maps a path for growth.
And the first habit, proactivity. That sounds key.
It's profoundly insightful. Covey defines proactivity as responsibility, our ability to choose our response in any situation based on our deeply held values, rather than just reacting based on external conditions or fleeting feelings. Proactive people carry their own weather. It doesn't matter if it's raining outside, they're driven by their values. Think of a leader staying calm and making rational decisions during market chaos. That's proactivity.
Choosing your response based on values, not just reacting.
Exactly. And the time management matrix is another powerful tool from the book. It highlights the crucial importance of quadrant 2 activities. These are the tasks that are important but not urgent. Things like long-range planning, building relationships, preventative maintenance, exercise, personal development.
The stuff we know we should do but often gets pushed aside by the urgent stuff.
Precisely. Quadrant 2 is the heart of effective personal management and long-term organizational health. But because it isn't screaming for attention like quadrant crises, it often gets neglected. It requires discipline to preserve time for quadrant 2, to stimulate that crucial, non-urgent progress.
And for relationships, the book talks about empathic listening.
Yes, and it's more than just active listening. It involves 4 developmental stages to truly understand someone. First, just mimicking content, so you're saying X. Second, rephrasing the content in your own words. Okay, so if I get this right, you think Y because of Z. Third, reflecting the underlying feeling. It sounds like I'm feeling pretty frustrated about this. And the highest level, fourth, is combining rephrasing the content and reflecting the feeling. So it sounds like you're frustrated because you believe Y is happening due to Z.
It's not about agreeing or solving their problem immediately.
Not at all initially. It's about deeply understanding their frame of reference, their perspective, their emotions. When you do this genuinely, it builds immense trust and fosters real connection. It moves communication beyond the surface to true understanding, the bedrock of any effective team or organization.
Okay, let's bring these ideas to life with some real-world examples. Entrepreneurial journeys first. Sam Walton. Sam Walton, Made in America, tells his story. His core strategy seems so simple in retrospect.
It does, but it was profoundly powerful at the time, putting good-sized discount stores into small, rural towns that everyone else in big retail was ignoring. Kmart apparently wouldn't go into towns below 50,000 people. Walmart found huge success in towns smaller than 5,000. That was a clear where-to-play choice.
Finding an overlooked niche.
Exactly, and building a defensible barrier through geographic scale and superior logistics in that niche. He also valued direct feedback immensely. The story about him showing up at 4 a.m. in the driver's break room with donuts.
Right, to grill them about what they were seeing in the stores.
Because, as he said, they'll tell you what they really think. That kind of ground-level intelligence straight from the front lines is absolutely invaluable for adapting and stimulating the right kind of progress.
That focus reminds me of Amazon. The everything store describes Bezos's long-term vision.
Yes. His almost legendary indifference to short-term opinions, combined with that chess grandmaster's view of the competitive landscape, allowed him to build for the very long term. He was famously willing to lose money during aggressive expansion because he understood the underlying strategic power he was building primarily through network effects and scale economies. He was preserving the core of customer obsession while stimulating relentless expansion.
And he's clearly an avid problem solver with huge ambitions, Blue Origin, The Washington Post.
Absolutely. And his acquisition of LoveFilm, the European streaming service, shows that strategic thinking. It shifted from just a financial investment to a core strategic interest. He saw the future of content distribution and knew he needed assets in those emerging markets. It demonstrates that clear focus, preserve the core values, but relentlessly stimulate progress into new strategic areas.
Okay, now for the flip side, cautionary tales. leadership and organizational missteps. The Edsel story from Business Adventures is just classic failure.
Oh, it's textbook. Ford, with all its resources, created this massive buildup and then complete anticlimax. The car bombed spectacularly. But what's maybe even more telling is the internal dynamic. There was significant internal resistance. Other Ford divisions, Lincoln Mercury, apparently were openly hoping that Edsel would fail.
Seriously, sabotaging their own company's product.
Engaging in rough infighting, whispering, and propaganda at the dealer level. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, driven by internal dysfunction, a company tearing itself apart.
That speaks volumes about culture and alignment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It shows a clear lack of strategic flexibility and internal coherence. When the Edsel's manager, Jim Crav, specifically asked for the car be built in its own plants precisely to avoid this infighting and let the new division build its own value network, his superiors refused. It highlights how internal politics and a lack of unified commitment can completely undermine even well-resourced initiatives. All the money and power Ford had couldn't overcome the internal divisions. Strategy isn't just external, it's fundamentally about internal coherence, preserving a unified purpose while attempting new ventures.
Wow. And Enron, from the smartest guys in the room, is another stark example of internal breakdown.
A catastrophic one. CEO Jeff Skilling was publicly promoting Enron as this elite professional firm, almost like a partnership, fostering entrepreneurial freedom. But behind the scenes, the book describes him greasing the deal with a personal appeal to get a problematic employee back into a key role, completely undermining the meritocratic principles he claimed to uphold. That contradiction is toxic.
The stated core versus the actual behavior.
Exactly, and the accounting issues. They were deeply ingrained, a terrifying example of probability neglect and ethical compromise running wild. Auditors were apparently joking about dubious strategies to minimize losses and hide liabilities way back in 1995. Skilling's resignation, supposedly for family reasons, coincided with him selling off massive amounts of personal stock just before the collapse.
Over $70 million, wasn't it?
Something like that. It just highlights the dangers of a culture where being opportunistic overrides ethical considerations and sound financial logic, leading to that shambolic, fraudulent accounting structure. It shows how even brilliant people can get corrupted by a system that rewards short-term appearances over long-term integrity, eroding the very core of trust.
Okay, let's shift to personal finance and investing. These principles of preserving a core discipline while stimulating progress seem to apply there too. The millionaire next door.
Yes, a fascinating study. It makes a clear distinction. Most millionaires aren't flashy high earners. They're prodigious accumulators of wealth, or PAWs, and they're often self-employed. Why? Because self-employment typically offers more control over your economic future compared to working for a large organization where downsizing is a constant threat. It's not just about income. It's about diligently managing and accumulating wealth, consistently living below your means, preserving capital.
That discipline connects nicely to The Richest Man in Babylon. Timeless advice there.
Absolutely timeless. No Messire advises his son to prove his ability both to acquire gold and to make thyself respected among men. It introduces the 5 laws of gold, which are fundamental principles for wealth creation. Let me see if I recall them. 1. Save at least 1/10 of your earnings. 2. Make your savings work for you profitably. 3. Invest cautiously with wise counsel. 4. Don't invest in things you don't understand or that experts disapprove of. 5. Avoid unrealistic earnings, scams, or trusting your own inexperienced desires.
Simple rules, but hard to follow consistently.
Very true. A gold lender in the story, Mathon, emphasizes not risking your principal and ensuring investments provide prompt earnings. The overarching message, work was proving to be my best friend. It's about consistent effort, prudent management, preserving your capital while stimulating its growth carefully.
And A Random Walk Down Wall Street focuses on the investing side, particularly risk.
Yes, it highlights diversification as a key strategy for preserving capital. Adding more securities to a portfolio reduces total risk, especially initially. It suggests around 30 diverse securities can eliminate most unsystematic risk, the risk tied to individual companies going bust or underperforming. But you can't diversify away systematic risk, the risk of the overall market going down.
So what's the recommendation for most long-term investors?
For serious money, like retirement savings, the book strongly recommends indexing buying low-cost funds that track the entire market. It gives you broad diversification, mitigates that unsystematic risk, and avoids the often futile and costly attempt to beat the market, which most actively managed funds fail to do consistently over the long haul.
Finally, the most important thing illuminated offers a crucial warning. tying back to those cognitive biases we talked about.
Yes, a huge one. Beware the dangerous premise that this time it's different. This belief often starts with a germ of truth, maybe a genuinely new technology or market condition, but then it gets spun into an overly optimistic theory. This can lead to big profits for a while, fueling a mania or a bubble that warps people's reasoning and leads to widespread probability neglect.
Everyone thinks the good times will last forever.
Exactly. In bull markets, the highest returns often go to those taking the most risk. But as the book warns, that doesn't make them the best investors or a model to follow. It often just means they got lucky in an unsustainable environment. It's a powerful call for critical thinking, humility, and historical perspective to avoid getting swept up in market euphoria. Preserve your rational core even when progress seems easy and limitless. Hashtag outroing to us.
Wow, okay. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Seriously, my head is spinning a bit in a good way. From Helmer's 7 powers and those defensible strategic barriers, through the innovator's dilemma, the impact of leadership styles, those cognitive biases, team dynamics. Phew. What really stands out to me, though, is how deeply interconnected all these elements are. It's so clear that true, enduring strategic advantage isn't just about having one good idea. It's about the relentless, adaptable, and often counterintuitive execution across every level of an organization. And it has to be informed by understanding both the market forces and, crucially, human nature. That ultimate secret seems to be that constant, delicate balancing act, preserving your core while simulating progress and everything else.
Absolutely. And if we try to distill it down, maybe here's some key takeaways for you, the listener, to mull over. Firstly, remember that strategic power isn't just having an advantage, it's building a defensible barrier against competition. That comes from an iterative process, leveraging resources effectively, sparking meaningful invention, and making a focused market thrust. That's preserving a core strategic strength. Secondly, organizations have to actively fight against trajectory lock-in. You need to be willing to embrace unlearning and maybe even punctuated change, potentially redefining your core business to avoid disruption and stay relevant. That's how you stimulate relentless progress without losing your way.
So resist getting stuck, be willing to change even fundamental things.
Exactly. Thirdly, effective leadership really hinges on that emotional intelligence, having adaptable styles, and actively fostering psychological safety so teams can have healthy conflict and give honest feedback. Remember, goals begin behaviors, and consequences influence future behaviors. Leaders shape the culture that enables both preservation and progress. And finally, whether it's in your personal finances or your corporate strategy, that human tendency for cognitive biases, for falling for the "this time it's different" trap, these are incredibly potent forces. You have to overcome them with discipline, critical thinking, and a commitment to looking deeper than surface appearances to preserve rational decision-making.
That's a fantastic summary. Okay, so given everything we've unpacked today about how visionary companies balance continuity and change, always striving to stimulate progress in, well, everything else, while fiercely preserving a timeless core, here's a final thought to leave you with. For you, in your own work, maybe your own life, what is that one thing you believe is truly unchangeable? Your fundamental core value or purpose, that thing that gives you the freedom and the solid ground to innovate and stimulate progress everywhere else. Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope you found these insights valuable for navigating your own path, whether it's in business or just personal effectiveness. Until next time, keep digging deeper.